When a man reaches out to you for no clear reason, understand this first. Men do not move emotionally without purpose. A man does not wake up and randomly decide to text, call, or message a woman he no longer cares about. Men are efficient by nature. We don't waste emotional energy where there is no attachment. So when he suddenly sends a message that looks harmless, casual, or unnecessary, that message is not about the words on the screen. It's about the feeling in his chest that would let him stay quiet any longer. A man will say things like, I just wanted to check on you, or this reminded me of you, or I saw something funny and thought you'd laugh. But what he's really saying is, you are still in my head. He doesn't know how to say, I miss you, because those words feel like surrender. To a man, admitting he misses you means admitting he lost control over his emotions. And most men are taught from a young age that control is strength. So instead of exposing the truth, he disguises it as something casual. Men use logic to hide emotion. That is why the reason he gives for contacting you almost never matches the emotional weight behind it. He'll ask a question he already knows the answer to. He'll bring up a memory that could have stayed buried. He'll comment on something that does to actually require a response. But deep down, what he's really doing is testing the door. He wants to see if it's still open. He wants to know if I'll respond, if your tone has changed, if he still has access to you emotionally. That small interaction tells him more than a long conversation ever could. When a man misses you, his mind keeps circling back to you at the most inconvenient times. Late at night, early in the morning, when something good happens, when something goes wrong. And every time your name pops into his head, his pride tells him to ignore it. His ego tells him to stay silent. His fear tells him rejection will hurt more than missing you. But missing you doesn't go away. It builds. It stacks. And eventually, it looks for a way out. That way out is just checking in. What most women don't realize is that random contact is often the result of emotional pressure. The longer a man holds in what he feels, the heavier it becomes. He can distract himself with work, friends, entertainment, or even other women. But the feeling always comes back because distraction doesn't replace connection. And when you were the connection that mattered, your absence is loud in his life. So he reaches out not because he has clarity, but because silence has become unbearable. A man will rarely start with honesty when he misses you. Honesty feels too vulnerable. Instead, he starts with safety, something neutral, something that won't expose him if you shut him down. That's why the message often feels underwhelming compared to what you think he should say. But don't confuse simple words with simple feelings. Men hide deep emotions behind small actions. That's how we survive emotionally. There's also something important to understand about timing. When a man reaches out randomly, it's often because something reminded him of who he was when he was with you. Men associate women with emotional states. If you brought him peace, confidence, motivation, or comfort, then moments when he feels stressed, lost, or unfulfilled will pull his mind back to you. He's not just missing you. He's missing how he felt around you. And that feeling is powerful. A man might go days, weeks, or even months without contact and then suddenly appear like nothing happened. That's not because he forgot the time. It's because he never forgot you. He just didn't know how to bridge the gap between pride and emotion. Men don't process feelings in a straight line. We suppress, distract, deny, and then suddenly feel everything at once. That emotional wave often results in a message that seems random to you, but to him, it feels necessary. When a man reaches out like this, he's also gauging your emotional availability. He is listening to your tone more than your words. He's watching how fast you respond. He's paying attention to whether you sound warm, distant, guarded, or open. This information tells him whether he still matters to you. Men are extremely sensitive to perceived rejection, even if they pretend not to be. One cold response can confirm his fear. One kind response can reopen a door he thought was closed forever. Another truth is that men often reach out when they realize no one else compares. He may have tried moving on. He may have talked to someone new, but comparison is brutal. And when he notices that conversations feel empty, that laughter does, he hit the same. that understanding is. T is natural. His mind goes back to the woman who made things feel effortless. That realization does come with confidence. It comes with regret. And regret often leads to random messages. Men also use these moments to relieve emotional tension. Holding in feelings creates stress. Reaching out gives temporary relief. Even if the conversation goes nowhere, just hearing from you calms something inside him. That is why some men disappear again after contacting you. Not because they don't care, but because the emotional pressure dropped once they reconnected. It doesn't mean the feeling is gone. It means they don't know how to sustain vulnerability. It is important to understand that random contact is not manipulation by default. Sometimes it is confusion. Sometimes it is longing. Sometimes it is fear mixed with hope. A man may not even fully understand why he reached out. He just knows something inside him pushed him to do it. Men are often emotionally reactive without being emotionally articulate. And here, as the part most people don't talk about, if a man truly did not miss you, silence would be easy. Ignoring you would feel natural. Your name would, T cross his mind. There would be no urge to reach out, no curiosity, no emotional pull. Indifference is quiet and stable. Missing someone is restless. It looks for cracks. It creates excuses. It finds reasons. So when he sends that message that feels unnecessary, don't rush to dismiss it. Don't overanalyze the words, but don't ignore the action either. Men show emotion through movement, not speeches. Reaching out is movement. It is emotional motion. It is a signal that something inside him hasn't settled. A man who reaches out randomly is standing at the edge of his feelings, unsure whether to step forward or retreat. He is balancing pride against longing, fear against desire, memory against reality. And in that moment, the message is not about conversation, it's about connection. It's about reminding himself that you still exist in his world, that the bond wasn't imagined, that what he felt was real. Random contact is never truly random. It's a quiet confession wrapped in logic. It's emotion wearing a mask. And if you understand men, you'll know that sometimes the smallest message carries the loudest truth. When a man goes silent, most people assume one thing: he's moved on. That assumption causes more confusion, pain, and misunderstanding than almost anything else in relationships. Because silence in men does not mean the same thing it often means in women. For many men, silence is not detachment. Silence is containment. It is how a man holds himself together when emotions feel too heavy to manage out loud. Men are not taught how to sit with feelings. From a young age, we are trained to solve problems, not to express vulnerability. If something cannot be fixed, controlled, or logically handled, we push it down. So when a man begins to miss you deeply, especially if the situation feels complicated, unresolved, or threatening to his pride, his instinct is not to talk. His instinct is to withdraw. That withdrawal is not absence of feeling, it is an overload of feeling. When a man goes quiet, what he is often doing is protecting himself from emotional exposure. Admitting he misses you means admitting he lost something that mattered. It means facing regret, longing, and sometimes guilt. Those emotions make a man feel powerless, and powerlessness is uncomfortable. So instead of reaching out and risking rejection or emotional vulnerability, he chooses silence. Silence feels safer than honesty. A man in silence is often replaying conversations in his head. He's rethinking moments. He's wondering what he could have done differently. He's imagining how things might have turned out if he had spoken sooner, listened better, or valued you more while he had the chance. These thoughts bring peace, they bring restlessness, but instead of sharing them, he buries them. On the outside, he looks calm. On the inside, he is unsettled. Silence also gives a man the illusion of control. When emotions start to rise, men often feel like they are losing their footing. Silence becomes a way to regain balance. By not speaking, not reacting, and not engaging, he convinces himself that he is in charge again. But control does not equal healing. It just delays the emotional reckoning. Another reason silence doesn't mean he's moved on is because men process loss differently. Women tend to grieve relationships early. They cry, talk, analyze, and feel everything up front. Men often delay grief. At first, they feel relief, freedom, distraction. But as time passes and the reality of your absence sets in, the emotions surface. And when they do, they hit hard. That is often when silence becomes deeper, not because he does care, but because now he does. A man can be silent while still checking your social media, asking about you through mutual friends, or thinking about you daily. Silence is not the same as forgetting. Forgetting is indifference. Silence is distance created by internal conflict. If he truly did care, he would need distance. He would need to protect himself from anything. Men also go silent when they don't know what they want. Missing you doesn't always come with clarity. He may miss you but fear commitment. He may miss you but feel unready. He may miss you but not trust himself not to repeat past mistakes. That confusion creates paralysis, and paralysis looks like silence. There's also pride involved. Many men struggle with the idea of going back to someone without something to offer. If his life doesn't feel stable, successful, or aligned, he may believe reaching out would make him look weak or unworthy. So he waits. He tells himself he'll reach out when things are better. But in the meantime, the missing does stop. Silence can also be a way of respecting boundaries, even if it does feel like it. If a man believes he hurt you, disappointed you, or lost your trust, he may stay quiet because he thinks reaching out would reopen wounds. That does mean he's emotionally gone. It means he's emotionally cautious. He doesn't want to cause more damage, even if it costs him connection. One of the hardest truths is that men often feel deeply in silence because they don't know how to translate emotion into action. They may feel regret, longing, and love all at once, but without a clear path forward, those feelings stay internal. Silence becomes the space where all of that lives. It's uncomfortable, but it feels safer than making the wrong move. Silence also allows a man to watch. When he's quiet, he observes how life unfolds without him. He notices whether you seem happier, stronger, or more independent. He notices whether others step into the space he once occupied. That observation can intensify missing you because it forces him to confront the possibility of being replaced. That instead of reacting impulsively, he stays still, processing the weight of that realization. Men often underestimate how long emotions linger. They expect feelings to fade quickly if ignored. But emotions don't disappear, they wait. And the longer a man stays silent, the more those feelings mature. What started as confusion can turn into regret. What started as distance can turn into longing. And what started as silence can eventually break, often at unexpected moments. This is why men sometimes reappear after long periods with no explanation. They didn't forget. They didn't suddenly remember. The feelings were always there, quietly growing while he tried to outrun them. Silence just delayed the conversation. It didn't end the connection. It's important to understand that silence doesn't automatically mean intention. A man can miss you deeply and still not know how to show up correctly. Missing someone does not equal readiness. Feeling does not equal action. And many men struggle with that gap. They feel more than they can manage, so they do nothing. When a man is silent, it's often because he's wrestling with himself. His heart wants one thing. His mind warns him of consequences. His pride tells him to stay strong. His fear tells him not to risk rejection. And all of that noise results in quiet behavior. So if you're trying to interpret a man's silence, don't assume emptiness. Don't assume detachment. Silence is often the loudest sign that something unresolved is still alive inside him. Men don't go silent because they feel nothing. They go silent because they feel too much and don't know where to put it. Silence is not closure. Silence is a pause, a holding pattern, a space where emotions are trapped without language. And until a man learns how to face what he feels without fear, silence will continue to speak on his behalf. When a man starts acting inconsistent, most people label it as a lack of interest, emotional immaturity, or manipulation. But inconsistency is often something much deeper and more complex. It is usually the visible sign of an internal battle. When a man misses you but doesn't know how to handle that feeling, his behavior begins to swing back and forth. One moment he feels pulled toward you, the next moment he pulls himself away. That push and pull is not accidental. It is emotional conflict showing itself through action. Men are taught to value control over emotions, situations, and outcomes. Missing someone threatens that sense of control. When a man feels himself getting emotionally attached or emotionally vulnerable, especially after a separation or emotional distance, his instinct is to regain balance. Sometimes the balance looks like reaching out, being warm, open, and present. Other times it looks like withdrawal, silence, and emotional distance. Both behaviors come from the same place, caring. Inconsistency often begins the moment a man realizes he hasn't let go. At first, he may tell himself he is fine. He may distract himself with work, social life, or even new connections, but distraction has limits. Eventually, something triggers memory, a smell, a song, a familiar place, or a quiet moment alone. Suddenly, the feelings resurface. In that moment, he feels the urge to reconnect. He sends a message. He engages. He shows interest. But once that connection is reestablished, fear follows closely behind. That fear is not always fear of you. Often, it is fear of himself, fear of falling back into something he doesn't know how to manage, fear of repeating mistakes, fear of emotional dependence, fear of losing his sense of autonomy. These fears dawn, erase the feeling they interrupted. So after reaching out, after feeling close again, he retreats. Not because the feeling vanished, but because it intensified. Men struggle with emotional regulation when they care deeply. They don't have many tools for managing vulnerability. So instead of staying steady, they oscillate. They give attention, then pull away. They open up, then shut down. This inconsistency can feel confusing and painful to the person on the receiving end, but for the man, it feels like survival. He is trying to find a middle ground where he doesn't feel overwhelmed or exposed. Another reason inconsistency shows up is internal disagreement. Part of him wants you. Another part of him believes he shouldn't. He wants you. That belief might come from past arguments, unresolved issues, outside pressure, or personal insecurities. When these parts clash, behavior becomes unpredictable. One day, the emotional side wins. The next day, logic takes over. And logic often tells him to step back, protect himself, and avoid complication. Men also become inconsistent when they are unsure of your availability. If he senses warmth and openness from you, it draws him closer. If he senses distance or guardedness, it triggers insecurity. Instead of addressing the insecurity directly, he reacts behaviorally. He may pull back to avoid potential rejection, then return when the fear subsides. This cycle can repeat many times before he gains clarity or courage. Inconsistency is also linked to timing. A man might miss you emotionally but feel unprepared practically. His life may not be stable. His goals may feel unfinished. His confidence may be low when he feels like he can. To show up fully, he limits his engagement. But when the emotional weight of missing you becomes too strong, he breaks that limit temporarily. That is why his presence feels intense in short bursts and absent in between. What is important to understand is that inconsistency is not emotional neutrality. A man who feels nothing is consistent in his absence. He does to reach out. He does to fluctuate. He simply moves on. Inconsistency only exists when there is attachment mixed with fear. It is the behavior of someone who hasn't resolved his feelings, not someone who lacks them. Men often underestimate how visible this internal struggle is. They believe they were hiding it well. They think silence looks like strength and distance looks like clarity. But from the outside, it looks confusing. It looks unstable. It looks like mixed signals. And that's because mixed signals are exactly what is happening internally. Another layer to inconsistency is hope. Even if he doesn't consciously admit it, part of him hopes the connection is still there. That hope pulls him back. It makes him check in, engage, and test the emotional space between you. But hope also creates vulnerability. And once vulnerability appears, fear rushes in to shut it down. So he disappears again, trying to protect himself from disappointment. Men are also affected by pride during emotional conflict. Admitting consistency would mean admitting desire. It would mean choosing you clearly. That decision feels risky if he's unsure of the outcome. So instead of committing to presence or absence, he hovers in between. Inconsistency becomes a way to stay connected without fully committing emotionally. This pattern can continue for a long time if nothing forces resolution. As long as he can maintain partial access to you emotionally, he doesn't have to confront his fear or his longing fully. But that doesn't mean the feelings are weak. It means they are unmanaged. There are moments when inconsistency becomes more intense. Usually this happens when he senses you pulling away for real. When he feels that he might actually lose you completely, the emotional side of him surges. He may suddenly become attentive, expressive, or even vulnerable. But if that closeness isn't grounded in clarity, the cycle repeats once the fear returns. Men don't always understand their own inconsistency. They feel justified in each moment. When they reach out, it feels right. When they pull back, it also feels right. But they rarely step back and see the pattern. They don't see that the inconsistency is a message in itself, a message that says, I care, but I'm afraid. It's also important to say this. Inconsistency is not a promise. It is not a guarantee of action. A man can miss you deeply and still not choose you. Emotion alone does not create change. Awareness, courage, and readiness do. Until those align, inconsistency remains the language of his internal struggle. When you experience a man as hot and cold behavior, you are witnessing his unresolved emotional state. You are seeing the tension between desire and self-protection play out in real time. He's not calm. He's not settled. He's conflicted, and conflict rarely looks neat or logical. So when a man moves closer and then disappears, understand that the closeness was real and the disappearance was also real. Both came from the same place. He is not pretending. He is not always calculating. Often he is overwhelmed by feelings he never learned how to manage properly. Inconsistency is what happens when a man hasn't chosen yet, but hasn't let go either. It is the space between missing someone and being brave enough to face what that missing means. When a man misses you deeply, one of the quietest yet strongest signals he sends is comparison. He may never say your name out loud, but he carries your presence into every interaction that follows you. Men do not separate emotions the way they pretend to. When a woman leaves a lasting emotional imprint on a man, she becomes a reference point. Every new experience passes through the memory of what he felt with you, and that comparison happens whether he wants it to or not. Men often believe they can move on quickly. They tell themselves that time, distance, or new company will erase old feelings. At first, it seems to work. Distraction gives relief. New faces bring novelty. Conversations feel light and uncomplicated, but novelty fades fast. And when it does, depth becomes noticeable by its absence. That is when comparison begins. He realizes that laughter feels different, that understanding doesn't come as naturally, that comfort feels thinner than it once did. And in those moments, he doesn't think, I miss her. He thinks something is missing, but that something has your shape. Men compare emotionally, not verbally. He doesn't sit and list qualities. Instead, he feels the contrast. He notices how he has to explain himself more now. How silence feels, awkward instead of safe. How being around someone new does. He quiet his mind the way being with you did. These realizations are subtle, but they accumulate. And the more they accumulate, the more your absence becomes noticeable. A man may continue dating or talking to others while missing you. That doesn't mean his feelings for you weren't real. It means he's trying to prove to himself that he can replace what he lost. Men are problem solvers. When something ends, they look for substitutes instead of processing grief. But emotional connection is irreplaceable on demand. And when replacement fails, comparison becomes unavoidable. One of the most painful moments for a man is realizing that what he had with you was rare. That realization does come immediately. It comes after he tried to recreate the feeling elsewhere and failed. When he recognizes that the ease, trust, or emotional safety he felt with you is common, regret starts to grow. Not loud regret, quiet regret. The kind that shows up late at night in stillness when distractions are gone. Men also compare how they felt about themselves with you versus without you. This part is important. If you made him feel confident, supported, understood, or capable, your absence affects his self-image. He may notice that he feels more irritated now, less motivated, less grounded. He might not connect these changes directly to you, but emotionally, he knows something shifted when you left. And that awareness deepens missing you. Comparison intensifies when a man realizes that no one challenges him the same way. Not all challenge is conflict. Sometimes it's the way you saw through him, pushed him to grow or held him accountable. Many men don't appreciate that while it's happening, but they miss it when it's gone. When someone new accepts less depth, less honesty, or less effort from him, he may feel relief at first, but eventually he feels unfulfilled, and that fulfillment gap leads his mind back to you. Men also compare emotional safety. If he felt emotionally safe with you able to be imperfect, uncertain, or vulnerable, that safety becomes hard to replace. New connections often feel performative. He feels like he has to impress, maintain an image, or stay guarded. That emotional effort is exhausting. And when he realizes how effortless it felt with you, missing you becomes heavier. Even intimacy is compared, though men rarely admit it. Emotional intimacy leaves a stronger mark than physical connection. Intimacy with you felt meaningful, connected, or grounding. Physical closeness elsewhere can feel empty. That contrast is jarring. And while he may not articulate it, he feels the difference deeply. Comparison doesn't always push a man to act immediately. Often, it makes him reflective. He becomes quieter, more thoughtful, less reactive. People around him may notice a change in his mood without understanding why. That's because comparison pulls him inward. He's mentally revisiting what he lost while trying to understand why it mattered so much. Men also compare how you treated them versus how others do. Respect, patience, belief, and care are not as common as many men assume. When he encounters indifference, criticism, or emotional inconsistency elsewhere, he remembers how it felt to be valued by you. That memory carries weight. It reshapes his understanding of connection. This comparison process is slow and often uncomfortable. It forces a man to confront the possibility that he let go of something meaningful. And men don't like confronting loss they believe they caused. So instead of reaching out, many sit with the feeling quietly. They replay moments. They remember things they overlooked. They recognize patterns they didn't see before. All of this happens internally without announcement. There is also fear attached to comparison. Realizing that no one compares to you raises a painful question. What if I don't get another chance? That question creates hesitation. It makes him cautious. He may want to reach out, but he fears rejection. He fears that too much time has passed. He fears that you've changed or moved on. So he holds the feeling instead of acting on it. Men often wait until a comparison becomes undeniable before they move. That's why some men return after long periods of silence. Not because they suddenly remembered you, but because every comparison led them back to the same conclusion. You weren't easily replaceable. And that truth took time to sink in. Comparison also brings clarity, but clarity doesn't always bring courage. A man can fully understand what he lost and still feel unable to face it. That's when missing you becomes a quiet companion in his life rather than a problem he solves. He carries the memory forward, measuring future connections against it. When a man compares every woman to you, it's not about idealization. It's about emotional imprint. You became part of his internal framework for connection. And frameworks don't disappear just because a relationship ends. They shape how he feels, what he notices, and what he longs for. So when you wonder if a man misses you while seemingly living his life, understand this. Comparison is happening in places you can't see, in moments he doesn't talk about, in silences he doesn't explain. Missing someone doesn't always look like reaching out. Sometimes it looks like realizing again and again that what you had